my question to you, Kevin, is that I come from a Muslim family, all right, and as I said, I'm 25 years old. Um, don't really have a problem getting women, but to be honest with you, man, I just don't see any benefit in getting married, and I I just want to get your thoughts on what are some things I should be aware of committing to a life of being single.
What's going on, Rebel Family? Today's video is marriage worth it for Generation Z? But before we get to the video, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Make sure the notification bell is clicked so you can get future updates whenever I go live or post new videos. So, the initial clip that you saw came from Kevin Samuel's show. Where he recently, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, he had men on his live stream, and he was talking to one individual here in particular, and that young man is from a Muslim family, as he stated. I want to jump right into it. There's some things that I want to point out and get into an article referencing Generation Z and their thoughts on marriage, and how they view marriage as opposed to Generation X and so forth. Let's jump right into the clip. I took some pieces of the clip, so it's not the full 30 minutes, and let's jump right into it here.
So, my question to you, Kevin, is that I come from a Muslim family, all right, and as I said, I'm 25 years old. Um, don't really have a problem getting women, but to be honest with you, man, I just don't see any benefit in getting married, and I I just want to get your thoughts on what are some things I should be aware of committing to a life of being single. Well, Kevin, I just don't, I'm getting a lot of family pressure. When are you going to get
What?
married? When are you going to get married? And I have never told anyone except for you that I truly am not going to get married. I
Then
rather,
okay, don't get married.
but I don't want to commit to a woman. I
Okay,
don't want
then
to.
don't. Then don't.
Okay, and you support me in that decision.
I'm
Okay, so here the young man states that he wants to be supported in his decision whether or not he's going to get married, and it shows that he is kind of unsure of himself, even though he kind of stated that he has no problem getting women, and he has all these things going on. In the clip, in the full 30 minutes, he talks about how he's a software engineer. He doesn't have any he wants to build a legacy, and he built a legacy of himself in school, making good grades, et cetera, et cetera. That he's been in a couple of relationships that he was in. One, for the longest one he was in, was for 8 months. The other, he was it was just kind of a casual sex type of thing, and he just really doesn't want to be involved with women or long term. And he I guess he kind of was looking for validation with he wanted Kevin to validate his choices, and that's why he said, will you back me up on this, as if Kevin is going to go to his family and say, well, look, this young man doesn't want to get married. I think you should just, you know, back off, because he said he was getting family pressure. The family was pressuring him. Also, the family is providing him money, because he talks about how he doesn't have any issues with money. He has over $1 million portfolio and so forth and so on. But he's getting that from his family, and the family is now pressuring him because all of his brothers and sisters are married. He's the youngest, I believe, and they are wondering when he's going to get married. So that's kind of the crux of the issue, and him stating to Kevin, "Will you back me up on this?" Kevin didn't hear him, and he kind of was like, "No, I'm not going to argue with you," and that's where we're going to pick up from here.
not gonna argue. No, I'm not
You
gonna tell
don't?
you what to. No, 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 no. I don't think. No. I'm going to tell you why. No, I think life is about people.
Understood. And if I may ask you one question, one last question, Kevin.
Sure.
Um, so what is your um your philosophy on marriage? Yours, like yours as in you as an individual.
For me personally,
Yeah, yeah.
I'd get married again.
So you're open to
Yes,
getting
I've
married.
said I've been very clear on that. I don't I don't I don't want to be 75 years old, 65 years old, uh, with a rotation.
And I think this answer threw that young man for a loop. He didn't, I don't believe he expected Kevin to answer that way because in another portion of the interview, he is going to state how Rolo Tomasi, I get this is another Red Pill guy if you guys are not familiar. I'm not really familiar with the guy. I don't listen to him. I know the name, and I probably couldn't pick him out of a lineup if I saw him. I've seen the pictures, whatever, but I don't listen to him. So he stated that Rolo Tomasi was like he doesn't believe in marriage and he won't get married. And so to that, Kevin was pretty much like, well, listen. I don't think you're quoting Rolo right because a lot of these older guys in the red pill space and the manosphere, so forth, they are in long-term relationships, even though they will tell young men not to be in these long-term relationships or not to get married. Some of them have been married, some of them are now married again, some are in long-term relationships, and yet they these young men listening to them have picked up the idea. I understand it's on the listener what they interpret from what's being said. If it's not outright being said, but these young men have picked up that somehow or another, don't get married. So I think this threw, I think this threw the young man for a loop here.
Hmm.
It's just not. I mean, just life is about relationship. That's what it comes down to. And relationships, by their very nature, are risks. Now, if you're Muslim, but and if you're in
I'm
my
not religious.
See, so now when Kevin was about to go into detail about him being Muslim, well, I'm not religious, and it's kind of a why bring it up at the beginning because you clearly stated that my family is Muslim, which being Muslim, when I hear that, I instinctively know what that means at this point, right? Whenever someone says my father was Muslim, that pretty much means, well, I'm not, even if they may have a name that's associated with being Muslim, right? And I would bet that this young man, his family is Pakistani, or something in Indian, Bengali, something over in the Southeast Asian part of the world. I would guarantee that, right? Because that's just the way he sounds, his voice. And they will pressure their young people to get married. In fact, they will choose the wife or husband for their children, right? Which is not necessarily a bad thing. But, so he's getting pressure and it's a societal pressure to get married, right?
Okay, but now we're in the holiday season. Tomorrow, people will be getting together for family holidays. But this is also the time of year where suicide and stuff spikes because people don't have
Hmm.
time to spend. How big is your family? You have many siblings?
Yeah, I have a sister, two sisters, and a brother. They're all married.
Okay, okay. Do you now? Here's the thing: not every man wants a legacy. Not every man wants. Because some guys want to live a life of a bachelor. Do you truly want your own children? Would you like a son?
No, I don't, Kevin.
Because then
I'm considering
kudos
bisexual.
to you. Then kudos to you for knowing yourself at this age.
Right, and that's a good thing because he stated, okay, hey, I don't want children, and then he stated earlier, look, definitely don't have any children outside of wedlock. Don't do that by any stretch of the imagination, right? And the young man stated, "Oh, absolutely not." And now he just states plain out that he doesn't want children at all. So, a lot of young men want children and they want to have children within the confines of a marriage, which is the way it should be done, right? It shouldn't be this thing of, well, we're going to just willy nilly just go out here and have children. And that doesn't benefit, the people in the long term, especially with Muslims. In the Muslim community, there is this push against marriage through the state or state sanctioned marriage or state or the actual institution of marriage being certified by the government. There's this push to say, well, we don't need that. We can just be married Islamically. But young men have no rights in that situation for the most part, and in particular the state that it depends on, right? Not a lawyer, not giving legal advice, but just from research and in my own state, that you have to be legitimated, that if you're not married to the woman, the child belongs to the woman. The man most time has no rights to the child. In fact, he is not even seen as the father, though he may be required to pay child support. So it is definitely an unfair system and a situation to be in. And he would have to go to court and then prove that he is the child's father to be legitimated. He can get the child's last name changed. So I don't understand why some of these. I've seen situations where women are saying that they're not going to give the their child, the last name of the father. I'm like, she doesn't have a choice in that. He can go to court and get that changed if he's proven to be the father. So go out here and get your rights. But young Muslims will do this, and then they have no rights to their children. And again, like I said, they have to have a judge to sign off and say, okay, yeah, you are the child's father. You do have some rights, even if it's only visitation every other weekend or whatever. There's no straight 50-50 custody. But let's jump into another video. And these young men, and I'll get into this a little bit later after I get into the article, but young men like this man here on that Kevin's interviewing, he's speaking with, are the reason why I got into making content. And this other clip comes from the Lapeef Let's Talk show with the brother named Jonathan Barronfield. He's a younger brother also. This brother here was 25. Jonathan Barronfield is like 27. So I'm gonna jump into that into that clip. And these young men are the reason why I got into producing content and podcasting.
Boy, like, hey JB, let me ask you a question. How old are you, fam? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm 20.
So,
Boy, like, hey JB, let me ask you a question. How old are you, fam? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm 27.
Okay.
Look at Chicago.
So here's what I wanted to say. Like, the thing is, first of all, Island, I never said that it's not about culture. It's not about like the woman being patient. It's more about, again, it's more about the values. It's more about the values.
She don't have to be Haitian.
So
wait, what are you saying?
Hold on. Let JB talk. Everybody else mute.
Yeah, so it's more about the values and like in my situation personally, I mentioned this before. Like my primary concern is like anything that I could do something about. So for example, like when you talk about resources and assets, right? Like you have a prenup and you have a postnup. I talked about this before, right? So at least if you do things right, then you can protect those. But when it comes to, for me, marriage, I'm very pro marriage, but when it comes to marriage in the United States, there's one aspect that you just cannot protect yourself against, and it's the woman just basically changing her mind at some point, getting up and leaving and taking your children, right? And for me, that's my primary reason for wanting marriage is for children. That's my primary reason. Like if it wasn't for children, I don't even know if I honestly care about marriage, right? Other than the more like religious reasons.
So for those two aspects, those are the reasons why, or two of the reasons why I wanted to get into podcasting, right? That there are young brothers who want to get married to have children. there are also young brothers who want to get married because of religious reasons, right? Let's keep going with Jonathan Barronfield, but I just wanted to point out how intelligent these young brothers are and understanding what it is that they want or what they don't want, and understanding that there's a system out there that's actually working against them. For some of the things that they do want, there's a system that is unfair to them and some of their wants out here.
So because of that, like, and there's no recourse. And TLA talked about this, like the lead attorney, he talked about this. I actually had a private conversation with TLA as well, where he actually, went back and forth with me on this. And basically, like, when it comes to child custody, there's no recourse. Like, if the woman decides to change her mind, and then she could basically drain you financially, at least in America, she can drain you financially. And in most cases, the overwhelming majority of cases, men lose. And when it comes to child custody cases, and it's that doesn't even have anything to do with marriage. It's just that's just the reality of it, right? That's a fact. So if you're looking at marriage, and your primary reason for it is children, and then you're dealing with a system where the woman has that level of power, and you can't work against it. That's actually something you can't just shove under the rug and just say, don't be fear-based or whatnot. Like, that's actually a very, very big concern. So for me, that's my primary concern with America.
Okay, so he states exactly what it is here, and I'm going to jump into the article. And there was an article released here, and it states it talks about young people's attitude toward marriage is changing. Here's why it matters, and a lot of the reasons why these things are. There's so many studies about the attitudes and towards marriage and the younger generations. Because we've seen in other articles how there's population issues, there's birth rate issues. We've seen it in China and in Japan, to where the negative birth rates over in some of these countries, and it's happening here in America as well, right? And I think it was like 13 states. There's an article in 13 states, and I should have probably brought it up here, but I don't want to digress too far off the point. But in an article stating in like 13 states in the Northeast, like Virginia and those West Virginia, those types of states, that there's a zero birth rate amongst white people. So, according to Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, white genetic annihilation, that the white population has always been worried about their population. Once they kind of started, traversing the world and kind of seeing that, hey, in terms of population, we're a minority here on the earth as white people. There's more colored people, in particular black people, or black colored people, black skinned people, or darker skinned people in the world than us. So, we have to develop a system to protect ourselves. So it says here, compared to other groups, more young adults view marriage as old-fashioned, out of date. Although more than half agree the institution makes families and children better off. What that is saying to me is that though the young people understand that marriage makes families and children better off, like, you can obviously see the benefits in terms of if children are born in a stable two-family household. I know there's always the idiots out here who will, state the one-offs. Well, I was born in a two-man and this, that, and that. Okay, fine. There's always anomalies. It's a bell curve. I mean, come on. There's extremes on both sides, right? But for the most part, it's been proven time and time and time again that children are better off in a stable two-family household. Where the mother and the father are working together and raising the children, because you need both. You need both the male and the female, or the man and the woman, to produce a child. But then we get it twisted when it comes to raising a child, then we only need one. One is good enough. No. If it takes two to produce one, then it should take two to produce one and then raise that one up to its fullest potential. That's how this thing should work, right? But I'm not going to read the whole article. There were some things that I wanted to point out here in the article. It's a pretty good article. It's a good read. But it states here, the 2021 survey was released Tuesday from Washington, D.C. The margin of error is plus or minus 2 percentage points. More adults generally agree being legally married is less important than having a personal sense of commitment to your partner, nearly 48% compared to 31%. But all age groups agree that marriage makes families and children better off financially, including close to half of the 18 to 29-year-olds. And more of them agree marriage is for life, come what may, though in smaller shares than those of older ages, right? So again, this is still proving that they see the benefits in marriage. So then what is it? If they see the benefits in marriage, yeah, there are a lot of things that are old fashioned, right? We get that. Some of them may see it as old fashioned, out of date, but they see the benefits of marriage. They see the personal. They think being married is less important than having a personal sense of commitment to your partner. But what greater sense of commitment to your partner would you have than getting married? You actually put some action behind your words that I love you, I want to be with you forever, whatever. You put some action behind those words, and you put it on paper. You actually get it recognized in front of everyone, in front of the world, in front of the state, whoever, and you make that commitment. And then they said that marriage is for life, right? That kind of shocked me. I didn't think that many of this generation thought marriage was for life, especially the way we've seen in past generations, Generation X, millennials, you know, go in and out of marriage, right? We see, I mean, so many people get married so many times over and over and over. And, it's amazing that, the younger generation Z thinks that marriage is for life when they haven't seen a great example from Generation X or the millennials, right? Let me keep going here, find this other section that I wanted to read here. Both Pew Research Center data and the American Family Survey over time have shown many young adults think a job is more likely to provide fulfillment than is marriage. Wilcox states this is factually wrong. We know that marital status is a better predictor of satisfaction than employment, and that marital quality is a better predictor of your happiness in life than your job satisfaction, right? And how many people are in jobs that they hate, so forth and so on. But it's funny, and I think this is more directed towards women, that they have, society has brainwashed women to think, okay, well, you know, your strength is in doing what typically men do, right? We typically feel better when we accomplish something, whether it's at a job or some type of personal project, business, whatever, right? So I think they brainwashed women to believe in this. So I think, without outright saying women, I believe that's who that was directed at. But let me keep going here. Over a quarter of those polled said they felt at some point in the past 2 years their marriage or relationship was in trouble. Women were slightly more likely to say that than men, of course, right? Because women are more whimsical, they are in nature, they are more discontented, or whatever they in terms of contentment, they could be more restless, right, than men. So of course they're going to see what men don't see, right? We can just be generally going along and thinking everything is fine, And all the while, the woman is over there thinking, okay, we're having problems. Didn't say anything to the man. But, so I'm not surprised by that, right? It says both Wilcox and Stone say young adults who put off marriage and starting families may be closing doors they'll find hard to open later should they change their mind. They're talking about women, right? Because women typically, as they get older, in terms of the dating market, their value drops, right? More men are looking for younger women than they are looking for older women. Why? Because if we want to have a child, it's more probable, more possible, and I'm going to say both, that we can have a child with a 25-year-old woman as opposed to a 45-year-old woman. Yes, does it happen? But yes, it does happen. But some women will come into the comments saying, "Hey, women do it all the time." No, they don't. That's why so many women are freezing their eggs now, because they understand, hey, I have a cutoff point. There's a biological clock for a reason, right? Stone was particularly concerned that women don't get to have the families they say they desire at the size they view as optimal. Yes, talking about women. And I'm glad they pointed this out as opposed to kind of being neutral. No, it's more an issue for women. A man in his 50s can still produce children, especially with a young woman who's, 25, 30, whatever. It's not so for women. Young men are not looking towards 50-year-old women to say, okay, I'm going to start a family with her. Just not happening. You know what I mean? Kaparowicz said the attitude of the young adult generation toward marriage bears watching, as it could impact future fertility rates and family stability. But he's not surprised they see things differently than older Americans. And see, they made sure to touch on that part, because if our young people are out here saying, okay, well, you know what, I don't want to get married, I don't want to have children. They're already declining in a population wise, right? And this, I'm not talking about Anglo-Saxon white Americans, right? The same thing in Europe. Several years ago, Europe talked. They predicted in certain 2050 something that they will be Europeans, white Anglo-Saxon Europeans will be a minority in Europe 2050 something. That whether it's Africans or Asians, and they consider like Muslims a different ethnicity, they will surpass them in population. It will not be a white. They will not be white countries anymore. Same thing here in the United States, right? That they are worried about this as well. So that's kind of the end of the article there of the things that I wanted to cover in that particular article. And again, it is a big thing. And now I want to jump into a couple of Facebook posts. I want to jump into a couple of Facebook posts that really made me get into action in terms of producing YouTube content. So here's one of the first of these. Hold on a second. This thing here. All right. So it says here. The sad reality is that we have all these Muslim women waiting to get married, and these brothers prefer women who don't make istinja. Now, what is istinja? Istinja is when we use the restroom, whether it's number one, number two, it doesn't matter. We use water to clean that particular area, all right? Male or female, both, You have to urinate, defecate, you use water to clean that particular area. So when he makes this statement, he's actually talking about non-Muslim women. So he's saying the sad reality is we have all these Muslim women waiting to get married, and these brothers prefer women who don't make istinja. Now, he didn't come out right and say it was anything wrong with it because, you know, throughout the Quran, Islam, there are there is consensus among scholars. There's some disagreement that Muslim men can marry non-Muslim women, right? If they are what Ahlul Kitab or people of the book. If they are people of the book, right? There's people who agree with that. Some people disagree, and I'm talking about scholars, right? I, whether it's lawful to do or not, I actually think that young brothers shouldn't do that. Just like I stated in the Megan Good and Devin Franklin video, I think that if you are Muslim, you should marry someone who's already on that same vibe, right? If you're Hebrew Israelite, you're Christian, Jewish, whatever, I think you should marry someone who's already on that same vibe. There's already enough things to argue about within inside of marriage. You don't want to make religion or spiritual beliefs or whatever it is another thing that you're going to argue about, right? So a woman that's already on your page, she's already on your program because she already believes that way, you know. So here's another one, and that first one was an imam. This one is an imam, and then what is an imam? Imam is like a pastor, a religious leader. He is the spiritual leader of a particular some people call it mosque. It's really masjid. Which is a Islamic house of worship, right? They are the leader of the congregation, spiritual leader, right? Religious leader, whatever. They teach, lead the prayers, so forth. This is another one. I have a serious question. Why so many boys raised in Muslim homes grow up and marry non-Muslim females? I want to hear from you brothers who did it. I have a lot of thoughts about this, and like I said, these particular Facebook posts, made me get into action. They really made me say, okay, you know what? These brothers are imams. They are off base. They are out of touch, right, with what's going on in today's dating market, because obviously a lot of us have been married for years, decades, so we're not out there. But sometimes you have blinders on and you don't look past your own set of circumstances, and I think that's what's going on in these cases here, right? And the next the next one here says, ladies, why do y'all go to this man Kevin Samuels to get advice about who you are, what you want, what you should be looking for, and where you are going? This is one of the saddest things I've seen in my 49 years on this earth. Where's your self-esteem? Where's your dignity? Is it not time for you to get closer to your Lord, right? And I was looking at this and was like, okay, majority of the women that reach out to Kevin Samuels are not Muslim, right? There's another content creator talking about how he's not African centered. Well, neither are the majority of the women that go to Kevin Samuels. They're not African centered. So the women who do go to him are more so aligned in terms of maybe religious reasoning and thought process. That's why they go to him. They're finding benefit. Now, what is he saying here? Why do you go to this man to get advice about who you are? He doesn't. They don't. Why wouldn't you? You're asking the women, but you're telling them. All these things are shaming tactics too, by the way. When you do Facebook posts like this, it's to get likes and to get the echo chamber to high five you and so forth. And it's to shame people who are going, whether it's men or women, right? You go to him to get advice because guess what? This brother here guaranteed if those women were coming to him, there's only one thing that he's going to say, like Muslims and African-centered men about the dating crisis in the black community, right? We have a pairing crisis in the black community that they don't know how to address. So women coming to this brother, he probably wouldn't be honest about, look, it is going to be based on how you look. Men are visual. The first thing that we see is how you look. We will get into all of the, are you a great person? Can you cook? We'll get in all to all that later. But the first thing is you have to pass the looks test. I don't understand why people don't just be honest with women when it comes to that. We will get into we will get into the are you a great woman? All that. We'll get into all that later, right? We first have to get past the looks test, right? He says who you are. He doesn't tell them who they are. He rates them because he is an image consultant, right? And this is not to defend Kevin Samuels, but this is how crazy some of these statements are that you can't see past. You just are outraged because of the way he talks or whatever, but you can't look past that and say, what exactly is going on here? So, who you are, he will rate them, yes, sure. What you want, well, they want a man. They don't know how to get him. They want a man making a certain living a certain lifestyle or making a certain type of living. They don't know how to get him. Who else should they go to? They can't go to women. Women don't typically know what men want. Men typically know what we want more than women. He said, what you should be looking for. He doesn't tell them that. He doesn't care what they're looking for. He doesn't care why. He says, look, I don't really care what you want. And, I just, can you get it? That's the point. Where, where you are going, and I don't even get that out. It's clear he watches clips or never really saw this stuff. This is the saddest thing. One of the saddest things in my 49 years on earth. See, that camera, that's the shaming language right there, right? Where's your self-esteem? And then he even puts it on him, right? Self-esteem has been for a lot of our women has been decimated for a long time. So you just saying this on a Facebook post means nothing, right? Where's your dignity? Is it not time for you to get closer to your Lord? All right. So most of them are not Muslim. I mean, so this is the point. These brothers can't see past their own circumstance, and these are the things, like I said, that made me prompt into action, right? And let me explain these two statements again about the Muslim women and the non-Muslim women. Of they don't even have this context of what's going on out here, right? So feminism has crept into every aspect of life, and it's affecting women no matter what religious background, no matter what makeup, if they're African centered, pro black, whatever you want to call them. Feminism has affected it has infected, let me say it, it has infected all of the women today. I don't care where, unless they're hiding under a rock and don't have access to social media, news, or any other type of form of media, then maybe it hasn't affected them, right? But if they do, it's infected these women. Now, in terms of Muslim women, there are Muslim feminists who will taunt to be a Muslim, or excuse me, a Muslim feminist. They want their cake and eat it too, right? So as a Muslim, it is the duty of the man to provide for his wife and his children, his family. He provides everything. The woman doesn't have to work. She doesn't have to give up any of her money, etc., right? But with that responsibility, the man also has he does have some rights that go along with that, right? She is to submit to his leadership. If he says, hey, I don't want you doing XYZ, even if it's, I don't even want you hanging out with these certain types of women. Your friends, they're not constructive, they're not conducive to you, they are a bad influence. I don't want you hanging out with those women. That brother has the right to say that. But the Muslim feminists will say, wait a minute, I'm my own woman. I can make my own decisions. You can't tell me what to do, but you still have to provide everything for me. So they will activate the feminist altar when it's convenient, but then they will also activate their Muslim altar, their personality when it's convenient. Pay all my bills, provide everything, so forth. Now, that's the Muslim. Now, let's take the non-Muslim feminists. Non-Muslim feminists is like, okay, well, look, I'm my own money. I'm my own woman. I can make my own money. I can provide 50% because I'd rather do that because that way the man doesn't get a chance to hold anything over on me. So I will gladly pay my 50%, but guess what? I'll choose my own friends. I'll choose. So looking at that, and young brothers will say, wait a minute, and men are practical. A young brother will say, wait a minute, if I can marry both, why would I marry one who wants, to take advantage of all the benefits and privileges when it's convenient for her, whether it's the Muslim or the feminist, as opposed to, well, if I marry a non-Muslim feminist, uh, she will produce half. She will, okay, I still got to deal with the feminist aspect, but I don't have to sit up here and just go down the rabbit hole of, you know, uh, go down the rabbit hole of, providing for everything, and then I still got to deal with the Muslim feminine or the feminist aspect, but and so that leads me to, um, exactly why did I get into this? Why did I get into this space, right? Why did I get into this space? The reasons why I actually started producing content, and I'll just say it. My generation, Generation X, we have failed our young men in a way that, you know, is probably unprecedented. We haven't even seen this from the the baby boomer generation, right? The Again, the leadership of Muslims, the older generation, Generation X, they are out of they are out of touch with what's going on in in society because they've been married for so long. They can't look back and see what's going on in the dating world, right? We were dating in our 90s and in the 90s, so forth. And not that women are so much different in the 90s than they are today, right? We had some of that feminist stuff going on in the 90s. We had whatever you want to call it, the ratchetness or whatever it is. We had all these things, maybe not to the same degree as today, but also we were not the same as some of these young men today as well, right? You know, some of the young men today are making a lot of money and it might not behoove them to get married. It might be a thing that um, it isn't as beneficial as, you know, if you're starting off at 18 making $200,000 a year and you want to get married, man, you're starting to think twice. If you're already at 18, you're already making $200,000, and I know brothers who were 18 making $200,000 a year in real estate. Real estate investing. Wholesaling and flipping properties, making $200,000 and quit college. Brothers from a Nigerian background, and his parents wanted him to go to college, and he was kind of like, "Why go to college so I can become an engineer to make $200,000 a year when I'm already making $200,000 a year? I could just skip the middleman." And I agree with him. I was like, makes sense to me. But if you're that age, there's a lot of drawbacks to getting married because the system is so unfair to men, right? I wanted to introduce some of the Manosphere talking points to young Muslim men because, again, Generation X imams and definitely baby boomer generation imams, right? The leadership of some of these masjids, they are not looking they are not looking at things from a manosphere point of view, right? They are not looking at it from a quote unquote red pill viewpoint, and we really should, because the negatives in society in terms of the marriage courts, divorce courts, or whatever, the family court system it's biased and unfair to men. It's biased towards women, unfair to men, very unfair, extremely unfair to men, right? So if there's where the Muslims talking about this to young Muslims, and not encouraging them not to get married, but to encouraging them to be more proactive, or be have more discernment when they are picking a potential wife, and learning how to protect their assets even within an Islamic framework, right? You know, um, I wanted to give usable advice to young men who want to get married, right? So, like I was stating earlier, that Kevin Samuel stated that a lot of these older red pill guys in the manosphere spaces, um, may talk about having a rotation, but are married or in long-term relationships with with women. But these young men are taking this thing that, oh, I shouldn't get married. Well, what about those young men who do want to get married? Um, who's helping to guide them? As a community, we have to reach back, right? We have to reach back and guide those under us. I don't know how many times I've talked to young Muslim men who have gotten married or were about to get married, and they were about to get married to a young woman who's just coming out of college, who's been working and been living on her own. And then they get married, and then within the first 2.5 years or so of being married, she's now a stay-at-home mom with two kids, and she's no longer working. I mean, what? Who? Who's good? What do you? How do you deal with that? You know, older brother like me who's been through that situation was like, wait a minute, young brother, keep an eye on your wife. She's probably going to become depressed. You know what I mean? Make sure that she has some type of outlet to get out. She's no longer working. She was just an independent woman 2 years ago, working in school. Now she's a stay-at-home mom, married with 2 children under two. I mean, you don't understand how and she's just in the house all the time. That's a recipe for disaster. It's things like those types of things, right? Man, how do you have fulfilling marriage on both sides, right? How do look? There's certain things that you have to let her know that you don't like up front. Don't wait and just put it off to the side, like some brothers will tell you, pastors will tell you, oh, well, just suck it up. No, you don't have to suck it up. There's a way to communicate that you don't like something that your wife is doing, right? And then once she understands, okay, he doesn't like these particular things, life goes smoother, right? Wanted to be a positive example of a married man to brothers who want to get married. There's so many brothers who like those Facebook posts that I was that I read, where it's saying, why don't they want to get married? Well, they've seen, and not necessarily in particular some of those brothers who were there, but in general, they've seen so many older Muslim men and women get married, divorce, get married, divorce. I mean, sometimes they've been married to 4 or 5 different women in the same community, 4 or 5 different husbands in the same community, right? They see this growing up. They see the brothers who have the rotating uh, second or third wife, right? They see this. He always keeps 3 wives, but he keeps changing them out. they see these things. These young people have eyes, so they're not going to go down that same route and make those same mistakes. You know, the wise man learns from the mistakes of others. So when you see this, these brothers act like our community has done nothing wrong. The older generations have done nothing wrong. You know what I mean? So then, one of the last things why I got into this thing is, you know, there can be a lot of blame going around on women in terms of what women do, women this, women that, and that's all fine and well and good. But what are you going to do, right? And I try to take that angle from the videos that I make. If I'm talking about a Megan Good or Aisha Curry or Sonia Curry or Jada, excuse me, Jada Pinkett, right? Sure, I point out what Jada Pinkett is doing or whoever. I point it out, but then it's always back to, okay, brother, now what are you going to do, right? What are you going to do as a brother? Are you going to sit there and take that? She's going to continue to give it to you as long as you allow her to do it. But, yes, Jada Pinkett, she's done a lot of things wrong to Will, right? But I don't blame her as much as I blame Will. I blame Will more because you allow it. Will Smith, you allow Jada Pinkett to do all the things that she's doing to you. You know what I mean? Right? People can get on Russell Wilson about Sierra. And to me, it's so clear with Russell and Sierra. He's filming whenever she's twerking, except for I think when she was in Italy, and I don't think he was there. But some of the one of the most I didn't even do a video on it because I'm like, clearly he's the one filming. He's doing that as a marketing strategy. I feel when your wife is out here twerking, it gives him a little bit of street cred. Okay, he has this woman who can twerk. She looks better than the white woman that he was with. But even though she has a child with Future, okay, that was a bit of an L for Russell Wilson. But nonetheless, in terms of looks, she looks far better than the white woman that he was with. Even with the child, even taking her, her rating, if she was a 8 or 9 or whatever, and without a child, and then she has a child with Future, and that takes her down to a 6. Hell, she still looked better than the woman that he was with. She was a 4. I mean, whatever. You know what I mean? Not to digress too much on that. But so instead of blaming women, what are we gonna do? We still have to correct ourselves. We still have to manage. No matter what's going on in the system, no matter what's going on in the world, brothers still have to react. So these are reasons why I got into. This is why this channel was that I started this channel. This is the reason why I produce the content that I produce, right? It is to, young brothers, what are we going to do? How do we manage ourselves and our actions, So in particular, really, I think our generation has failed the younger generations. Generation X has failed the younger generations, right? In a lot of ways, right? We can't keep talking about the rap music that they have today. It's a direct result of the rap music that we played and produced and supported in the late 80s, early 90s, and so forth, right? It's a trickle down effect. Okay, and I see idiots actually talk about. Well, we talked about selling drugs. We didn't talk about taking them. I said, well, what do you think is the next step? I mean, my goodness, the song "Dope Man" talked about how sometimes the drug seller will become a drug user because of the pressure. He starts using his own product. So I mean, come on, it's silly, right? We have to be honest with young men that where we failed and made mistakes, to where they don't make those same mistakes. They correct and learn from the mistakes that we made so that they don't have to make them. These are the reasons why I got into this YouTube space. These are the young men that I want to talk to. Obviously, if women are welcome to listen, so forth, but the content is not produced for women. It is produced particularly for young men, but men in general, Muslim men, Christian men, Hebrews, whoever, right? White men, black men, But understand it's coming through the lens of a black man who's Muslim, you know. So my take is going to come through that lens, and you know, but the advice is I want to be practical, and what can we do and learn and move forward. I'm a solutions guy. I'm a network engineer for 20 years. I solve problems. That's the way. That's been my um, my thing for 20 years, over 20 years now. I solve problems. How do we resolve issues? And that's the lens that I want to produce content and, um, you know, the point of view that I want to get across to young brothers. So those are my final thoughts. Peace, Rebel family.